Okay everyone, welcome to our final integral video to the top-down shooter series. Cover a couple things in this one, mostly animated visual effects, sort of like the boom explosion that we did last time, just sort of building on what that did, making it more adaptable, all that stuff. And we're also going to do the hit screen effect that you've been seeing in the footage and stuff like that. So yeah. Now before we start on this one, because I expect to get comments and questions about this, I chose to not cover particle systems in this series. First of all, because we're at part 13 of a very long series. I would much rather cover particle systems in their own video for more people to be able to find and not unfairly bury it into a part 13 of a roughly 13-hour long series. Plus, it's just a whole other topic that I just didn't really want to, tack on to the end of this for you guys who actually have been watching through the whole thing. I bring this up because the animated visual effects stuff that we're going to be doing is stuff that can be pretty much totally accomplished with particles and particle systems and things like that. And overall, using particles instead of using simple objects is massively more performance efficient. The thing is, the method that I'm showing you is not performance inefficient. It's, again, especially for low resolution pixel art games with a limited screen size. Like even this game is a pretty big screen size compared to the size of the player, and this isn't going to cause issues with your game or anything like that as long as you're following properly. We're going to be mostly using objects like we did with the explosion, but another thing is, we've already learned how to make objects and create them and manipulate them when we create them, and they're very, very flexible. And objects also have the benefit of having things like built-in depth, whereas particle systems don't have that benefit, and that means you need to use multiple particle systems to do different things. If you want to manipulate the angle or like the scales of a very specific animated effect, it's much easier to do that with an object than in a particle system. Again, not impossible, and I'm not trying to make it sound like it's a super difficult thing, because it's really not, but the thing is, it just would have been a whole different topic, and there are benefits to using this method that I'm going to show you. So for this game, it's totally fine. I think for a lot of games, it's going to be totally fine, but I will cover particle systems at some point in the future, and plenty of other people have already done so. So again, don't just use me as a resource, use lots of people. But yeah, anyways, I think this is still very worth watching, this video. I didn't do this for no reason, so definitely still give it a go. And at the end of this video, we're going to do a much bigger discussion. We're going to talk a bit about the game. Well, I think it's going to be the end of this video. I don't think I want to make it like a separate little thing. Who knows? Maybe it'll be a separate thing, but the point is there's going to be a discussion on this project whenever it's all done at the end of this video or after this video. I'll talk a little bit more about particle systems. I'll also talk about a little bit more a bunch of other stuff in this project, things that you could look into for improving or all that kind of stuff. So yeah, anyways, let's just get going and good luck. You remember that boom object? We used it to create some damage objects, but before we did that, it was just a cool visual that animates and then gets rid of itself once it's done animating. So why, for instance, could we not do that in other situations? So something like an enemy going poof whenever they die instead of just turning into nothing. So you know what? Let's just do it in whatever order I feel like doing it, because we're going to cover all those things. First, enemy going poof. So that's easy. We're just going to make a poof sprite. And I'm going to use the same exact method I made to make the boom sprite. So let me show you that sprite I have. So this is my sprite small boom. It's quite small, but you can see I used the same method that I used for the big one, where they're kind of like these 3 orbs here, and they start shrinking and going outwards. And I just added in another orb, and then it's just the 4. They keep going out. I split these into more orbs just to look nice and kept doing that. And it's the exact same method I used for the big one, but I just did it on a smaller scale. Again, could look a little bit better, but what you gonna do? So we're gonna spawn this in at our enemy's feet whenever they explode. And I'll show you how large it is really quick. So I'm gonna put it under my zombie here, and so you see this, it doesn't cover up the entire zombie, it just kind of covers up its bottom half. So it kind of just blows up from the feet like that, which I think looks pretty reasonable. And what's also reasonable about this size, where you can tell when I show you, this is sort of fitting into a 16 by 16 size pretty similarly. Oh yeah, and by the way, you remember to put your origin in the right place. Like I said, I'm going to kind of spawn this at the bottom of their feet, so I'm just going to go and do it like that so it matches up mine. But you see that it kind of fits into a 16 by 16 area, and so that way, if I have stuff like, say, a crate that's about 16 by 16, if this gets destroyed, I can also play a little boom animation right there. So yeah, so get your animation ready, and then we're going to make another boom exactly the way we made the first one. So create an object. This is going to be object small boom. I'm going to set the sprite to be my small boom, And all it needs to do is show up in the right place. So let's add our depth in the create event. And this is just going to be based on our negative y, since, you know, we just set the origin at the bottom, and we don't really care what the collision mask of this thing looks like because we're not going to use it for anything. So we want the correct depth, and we want to go down to other and add the animation end event again. And once this thing is done animating, just destroy it. So instance, destroy, simple. And now it's done, easy peasy. Now all we have to do is just spawn it at the enemy's feet when it dies. So let's open up our enemy parent, because we're just going to want every enemy to do this at default. And so here we're in the step event. We've already got the stuff where we're, you know, once the HP is down, we add to the kill count. We determine if we should do an item drop. And now we can just say, boom, VFX. And all we want to do is just instance create depth. And we just want to create this thing at our X, at our Y, and we can create it at our depth. Again, doesn't matter because we're setting it in the create regardless. And we want to make our small boom. And so that should do it. So, and boom, look at that. Now that's fun. That's a lot more fun than them just disappearing. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's see, hold on. Oh yeah. Look at that. And I think, I feel like this just improves the game so much, so quickly. So I'm happy about that. Another place we could use it maybe is, like I said, whenever the crates break. So let's do that. Oh, I put my output log over here. Why did I do that? There we go. Yeah, so let's add it in whenever our crates get destroyed. And we can also give our crates the boom crate treatment, where we show kind of how much damage it's taken by altering its sprite. So first, let me open up that sprite for the crate. There we go. And I probably should have showed you this the first time, but I can show you an easy method for doing something like this. So here I just have my crate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this first frame, and I'm going to create a new layer. So add a new layer, and I'm just going to take a dark color, like the outline. In this case, it's just black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just draw it to look like it's been, you know, cracked like this. And then maybe have the crack come down this way, and like that, and like that. So maybe like that. Okay. So first thing I'll show you is, easiest thing you can do is go to this layer now and sort of lower the opacity to be pretty low. And so now it looks a little bit more convincing that these are actual cracks in this. It doesn't look amazing. You might want to pick like a different color than just like a black or something. Like you could pick a really dark brown and that might look better, but you can see I can pretty easily make it look like it's damaged here. And what I've done is I've drawn it at like full damage. So I might even add like one more little crack here. So I've drawn it at like full damage. It's about to break. So what I can do is I can copy this again and paste it. So all the way on the right frame, I keep the most damaged one. And then on this one, I start erasing some of the damage. So the damage is kind of, you know, creeping away. See? And because our code just sort of figures out the image index based on like a percentage, it doesn't really matter how many images you have of this being broken. So you can add as many as you want. So make it as subtle or as intense as you want. So I'm going to copy this one and add a new one now. On the one on the left, I'm going to creep back a little bit more with this stuff. So start creeping back this way. So now going from the right here, that one, add one more, creep this stuff back a little bit more. And now we're getting to the point where we're only just like a little bit damaged. Like that. And I think that's fine for a first damage, right? So I think that's the same amount of frames I did for the TNT crate anyways. So now I just turn that opacity down a little bit to about here, maybe a little bit lower again. Dark enough so the player can tell, but not too dark so that it just looks kind of crappy. But yeah, so now you can just see it getting more and more damaged. So anyways, that's how I did that other one, in case you were wondering, or it's an easy way to make sort of a damaged piece of fodder or whatever. But yeah, so now we have the sprite done, and we can do what we did in our boom crate here, the show damage. So remember, we're getting our health percentage, and we're determining the image index like that. And we would do the same thing here, where instead of creating an explosion and a screen pause and a screen shake, we would just make our little, our small boom. So let's go into our object crate and do all that. So I'm gonna say show damage. So got our var health percentage equals 1 minus our HP divided by our max HP, because we are HP, because we're looking for the percentage of damage, not the percentage of health necessarily. And then we're gonna set our image index. That's gonna be our health percentage times our image number minus 1. So there we go. We should be showing our damage fine now for our regular crates. And now we just need to add in our little boom effect. So this is our destroy, and here's our boom. So instance create depth. Now the X and Y is going to be kind of important on this one. We need to figure out how far apart they are, because remember, our origin here is at the top left, which means that if we created it just at the X and Y, the boom would happen right here. And we want the boom to happen down here. So I know this is a 16 space difference and an 8 space difference just by looking at it. You can even tell by the squares here actually, but so I just already know that our X needs to be over 8 positions and our Y needs to be down 16. So I'm just going to go ahead and type that in. So we want to create this at our X plus 8 and our Y plus 16. We can create it at our depth, doesn't matter. And we want to create our small boom. Wow, my brain just failed me. Okay. So let's see how that's looking. Oh, I got to run all the way over to some crates. Oh no, they're so far away. Oh, okay, here we go. Yeah, look at that. So it gets damaged and it properly booms. That's great. I love that. So one last place I can think of doing the boom, just for simplicity's sake, is for our player whenever they lose, right? We haven't seen that in a while because our player has really high health, but let's do that real quick. So I'm going to go into my player, into the step event, and down to the death/game over. So we create the game over event. We also want to create our little boom. And since our player's origin is at their feet, we can just create this at the player's X, Y, and depth, just like we did with the zombie, and create our small boom. And if we want to test that, I'm just going to set our HP to 1 so we die immediately when we get hit by something. See our crappy little health bar. Okay, show me the money. And there we go. Nice. Now, something that you may have noticed right there is we had that long screen pause, but our boom kept animating. So, for instance, oh, I'm going to die. Hold on. Set that to higher number. Okay. Okay. So, if you watch the enemy right over here, our boom, see, that still played while everything else was paused. So again, that's because we did not remember to put in our screen pause code. So I'm going to put this back to 20. No more jokes. So let's go back into our small boom and we can add a step event and just say screen pause. Now, this object doesn't run any code at all in the step event. We're just running this to make us stop animating, to pause the animation. So we don't need to do the whole if screen pause, then exit, because there's no reason to exit because there's nothing down here. So we can just put screen pause in this scenario and it will know. So if I beat up this enemy now, yep, there we go. So now it pauses properly. Cool. So clearing everything up one more time. I'm going to get rid of all these blue hearts that I don't need. I'm also going to get rid of this asset layer that I don't need. Okay, more cleaning up. And lastly, that leaves how kind of boring our bullets look, basically. They just kind of pop out of the weapon with no sort of no sort of pop, so to speak. And when they hit stuff, they don't really do anything cool. They just kind of float into things and then disappear. There's not really any impact or any fun stuff with that. So we're just going to do the same thing that we did with the small boom, but we're just going to make some new animations for it. So let me show you what mine look like. So first I made this little sprite that I called S shoot burst. And this is sort of the bullet bursting onto the wall, or whatever it impacts with, and it just looks like this. So it's very simple, it goes very fast, but it just starts off as this little guy, and then sort of grows into like a full circle, and then the circle starts expanding as like a ring, warbles a little bit right here, and then the ring starts shrinking like that. And then it's at a pretty high speed. It's at 45 frames per second, which is very high. You probably don't need as many frames as I did, but I kind of just made it one step at a time. But I think this looks cool. And like I said, this is just going to play when anytime any kind of bullet object runs into something, pretty much. So I could make another small boom object. Where did I even put that? Okay, I put that in the enemies. So I could make another object that's pretty much exactly like this and call it, O shoot burst for object shoot burst, and it would have the exact same code. But now the more visual effects that you have that you want to do this with, that means you're just going to be creating a bunch of useless objects that really don't do anything. So what we could do is just create a single object and call it like O animated VFX or something like that. And just whenever we create that object, we can just set its sprite however we want to. So now what we're actually going to do is we're going to change our small boom. I'm sorry, I've done this multiple times to you, but it's to prove a point about how thinking ahead can, save you a little trouble later. So we're going to turn our object small boom, we're going to turn that into our animated VFX object. So we're going to change this, but again, we already have references to this in our code. So it's going to be slightly more difficult to change this now because we didn't think ahead. Which again, we only put it in 3 places. We put it for the enemies, the player, and the crates. So it's not going to take but 5 seconds to change this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this, and I'm going to call it O Animated VFX. And so now if we run our game, we would get an error because now we have things referencing object small boom, and that doesn't actually exist. So if we want to find all the places we referenced it, we can actually do something really easily. So if you hold Control and Shift and then press F, that'll open up our, it's a finder window. It's also called Search and Replace. And basically doing Control Shift F lets you search your entire project for references to certain things. So you can search for any phrase and find it. So if I looked up O small boom like that, if I hit Find All down here in our output window, or our search results window, pardon me, it will show us all the places we've referenced it. And like I said, we've only referenced it 3 times. So it tells us exactly where this is, which is our object crate in the step event at line 10. We created an object small boom, step event line 17 for the enemy parent, and step event line 161 for the player. And what's nice is if you double click them, it will immediately open up those objects for you and take you right to that code. See, so double click, and it's already got us there. And you see that these are blue now because we don't have a reference to them. So, like I said, this is a search and replace, which means you could type in what you wanted to find, and then we could replace it with example O animated VFX. However, this changes the files directly on your disk. So this like changes the core files in GameMaker, and it is best avoided because I feel like that's caused problems for me before. And anything that just changes a bunch of files on the disk, I don't trust, and I feel like will create more errors than solving them. In this situation, it would probably be fine because it's just 3 references, and I'm going to assume this tool, isn't broken. I mean, I've used it before, so it does work, but in this case, it's only 3, so I say we just go in manually and type in object animated VFX, like this, for each one. So I clicked on each one and replaced it with O animated VFX. So now if I ran this find all again, now it wouldn't return anything because we have not referenced it anymore. And if it is returning something, then you need to go change it. So cool, we have our animated VFX, and it would work the same because its default sprite is our sprite small boom. However, I said we could make it even easier for future stuff to use. Because remember, for future things, we're going to have to basically do the with instance create depth and then manually set a sprite in there. So once again, we can make a fun little helper function that will be very cool to us. So real quick, let's go back into our custom functions, back into our VFX section, which is becoming quite robust by now. So now let's make a new function, and we'll call this create animated VFX. Oh gosh, VFX. Typing with this mic in front of me is not fun. Okay, and so then we're gonna basically do what we did with create screen pause, which is we created a timed pauser and we input an optional time. So we're going to create this with a sprite, and I'm actually not gonna make this optional because every time I use why did I call that created? I'll call that create animated VFX, my bad. Because every time I use this, I'm gonna specify a sprite for it. So we want to say with our instance create depth. And so now we need X and Y positions. So we need to also add those in. And if we want to, we can also add a depth in. But like I said, depth doesn't really matter since we're automatically setting it to the Y position. But hey, maybe we don't, because some sprites are going to have different origins. So maybe we do want to actually set our depth manually whenever we create these things. So let's keep that in mind. So first, let's create an X argument, a Y argument, and let's create a depth as well. So great, we can just go ahead and finish filling this out before we alter anything. So let's create that at our X, at our Y, and at our depth. And we're obviously creating our object animated VFX. And we're going to set the sprite of that object, so sprite index, to the sprite that we input. So cool, easy, very similar to the way we did our screen pause. But like I said, I kind of had a revelation while we were making this. And, for certain things with our animated VFX, if I open that up here. We don't want depth to be -y. We probably do want to have actual control over it, especially if we wanted to make an animated VFX that was just like a really high up one. So we just wanted it to be like -4000 just so it shows up on top of everything. So now that we have that function, we can actually just get rid of our create event, because all we're doing in it is setting our depth, and we don't need to do that anymore. So that's fine. And because in our function, our sprite input is not going to be optional, we always want to have to type in our sprite because it's probably always going to be different. We can just set this to none. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So you can keep it this or you can set it to none. But the point is, regardless, you're going to have to type in S small boom. So cool. Before we move on, we can do our Control Shift F again, and we can search for our object animated VFX one more time, because now we need to go replace these lines of code with this function, which now we have 4 references because it's also counting the function that we just made. So anyways, I'm going to start with the player. So instead of instance create depth, blah, 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 I'm going to call create animated VFX. I'm going to use the sprite small boom. That's going to be at my X and at my Y and at my depth. Easy. And I can actually just copy this code because it's going to be pretty much the same thing for the other ones. So then I can go to my enemy parent, and that one's exactly the same, X, Y, and depth. So I can just put that there. And in my crate, the only difference is it has to be X plus 16 and Y plus 16. So put that there, and I'm going to say, or X plus 8 and Y plus 16. So great. And if I find all again, it'll only give us one search result, and that's where we reference animated VFX by itself in our function. So we can start working on this one in a second. And so now we have everything we need. We have this sprite and we have the function that will let us use this sprite. But first, we can just run the game really quick and make sure that we implemented that function correctly. So it looks like we did because it's working on the enemies. You might want to check your player death again. I'm a little too lazy to, but I can check the crates. And the crates and the enemies are okay, so I think we're okay. How frustrating must it be to watch me test this? I could have just removed a bunch of these enemies, but I just keep running into them. Okay, so now we can add in this shoot burst for our bullets whenever they run into stuff. So let's put this new create animated VFX function to the test. Clearing my workspace again. So first, let's go simple. Let's go into our blue bullet, and we just want to say whenever it gets destroyed, then we can run that little burst, because I don't really care how it gets destroyed. I kind of want to run it. So remember, these all have their limited range, but so I think it would kind of look nice if, regardless of how they terminate, they add a little visual in. So I'm going to add that in here. So I'm going to say this is our destroy, and then we can say this is our shoot burst, and we just need to create animated VFX. I want to use my shoot burst sprite, and just like the others, I want to create it at my X and my Y and my depth. So anytime a bullet is destroyed on an enemy or a wall, or it just gets out of range like this down here, as long as the destroy flag is true, it'll give us that shoot burst. So let's run the game and test that out. Oh yeah, so you can see them terminating over there easily. So, oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, you can see it. Okay, not too bad. They are showing up behind the enemy, which is because the enemy's depth is set like down here at its feet, and these are technically higher up. So I could just, well, first let me just say that, okay, yeah, I like the way that looks. I think that looks nice. I like that. Okay, so yeah, we could just alter how much we want the depth to be. So yeah, down here we could just do the depth, and we could do that like minus like 50 or something, just so they show up a little bit more on top. And now if I were to shoot this guy, let me use the yellow one. Okay, yeah. So now you can actually see it showing up. Awesome. So yeah, I'm liking that. It probably, since I did the minus 50, yeah, it shows up technically above like places where it should be behind, but to be honest, that doesn't really bother me. Can also help the player know where walls are, you know, could be a positive thing. So it's not really that bad. Depth is going to be one of those things that you kind of have to pick your battles with when you're making like these, you know, like top down kind of pseudo 3D scenarios. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm liking the way this is looking. I'm liking this. So cool. Next part is, you see, it doesn't do it for the blue ones where they pierce through the enemy. And that's because it's not being destroyed, obviously. And not only that, but also the enemy bullets could technically be using this too, but they're not. So whenever they hit the player or they get destroyed, they're not doing anything yet either. So first of all, we could add this destruction code to the enemy's bullet as well. So let's go into our enemy bullet, and it uses basically the same code. So if destroy is true, we destroy ourselves. So I'm going to add that into here as well. So this is a destroy, and that's a shoot burst. So I just added it in, same exact code for the enemy bullet. So it should now have that little visual effect whenever it runs into a wall or something, but it still won't do that whenever they pass through the player. So luckily for us, we can actually do this pretty painlessly in our getting damaged event. So let's go back to that function for the millionth time. Back to our custom functions. We're going to go into our get damaged, and here's what we can do. So down here where we are, I need to separate this out more. Maybe that needs to be there. You know, I'm just gonna, maybe I don't want all this staggered out like that. Maybe I want this more like this. Okay, I think maybe that's marginally better. Okay, anyways, so part where we're looping through the list and we're confirming whether or not we were hit. So we're taking damage from the specific object, and we're telling that object we hit confirm. So since pretty much every object that deals damage in our game are bullets, we can just create an impact visual here if we want to, because we've already confirmed that this instance just hit us. So we could say create animated VFX. We could do our shoot burst sprite, and we could create it at that instance's X, that instance's Y, and that instance's depth minus 50 if we wanted to do it in the same kind of way that we did it in the actual bullet objects themselves. So if we were to just test that really quick, we should see right off the bat that it does in fact work. So we are seeing impacts as we pierce through the enemies, and same with enemy bullets, which it's actually creating 2 since the bullet itself is flagged to be destroyed on impact with the player. So we could do something about that, and if you'll see right here, if I blow up this TNT thing, okay, you'll see that the 2 little things showed up over there, and that wasn't because I was shooting it. Those showed up because those 2 separate objects got a hit confirm on an enemy, so they were automatically created there from that script. So it's not perfect to do it this way, but if, for example, our damage instance had a variable called hit VFX or something like that, and it had to be set to true to run this code, then that could solve our problem. So maybe we should do that. So we can go into our object damage parent, because all of our damage objects are going to need to check for this, and we can set that VFX variable that we just created. Now, when I'm thinking of it, pretty much any object that gets destroyed when it runs into an enemy, or an object that gets destroyed when it runs into the player, they're not going to need this. And the only time it is going to be needed is whenever the player has like piercing bullets, right? So at default, I can actually just set this to false, and I can only set it to true in the objects that I want this to happen. So now that I've set this to false, first of all, we should be able to run the game and not get any errors. And now it should be off again because everything says, no, we don't want to run this code. And if I get hit by an enemy bullet, come on now, it only has 1 little thing. So good. And now I can add it into my blue bullet. So I can just go in the create event, and I can add hit VFX to be true. Now, unfortunately, because the way that I did the parenting system, and of course the fact that the 1 piercing bullet I decided to have was the first one that we worked on, technically now hit VFX is also true for our red bullet and our yellow bullet, because they're children of this object. So we can go into them and manually set them back to false, because they don't need to be true, because they get destroyed on impact with the enemies, which means we don't want them to get destroyed on impact with the enemies and then also create another VFX object because they hit the enemy, because we already know that hit the enemy. We already have a visual for that. So hit VFX equals false. Okay, so basically anything that does that like piercing property where it goes through stuff is where you'd want to put it. So if you have it to where the enemy bullets don't get destroyed whenever they run into the player, then you would probably also want to put hit effects equals true in that one. But anyways, now if we check, what we should get is this nice result where you see it impacting on the enemy, but we're not getting any doubles from like this. We're not getting any doubles, or at least shouldn't be, from our yellow, which it doesn't look like we are, even though it's very fast and it's hard to tell. But we can check with our red. Yeah, look at that. Look at this. Ow. Ow. Oh man. We are, oh man, we're almost there. this is almost exactly what I want. So what's the one last thing that we could do? Well, again, our bullets sort of just appear out of our weapon. They impact now, and they impact in a way that I think looks nice, but they do just kind of go out of the weapon there, like that. They just kind of fart out of the weapon. So let's make that look cooler. Why don't we? And that's basically just going to take us making one more animation, and I'll show you the one that I made. Okay, so I call this S shoot flash, and it looks like this. So first, there's like a little muzzle flash and like a circular shockwave. In the next one, the flash is gone, turns into a little ring. The shockwave starts breaking up, and then little particles start flying out. And then it just kind of keeps going and keeps going and keeps going until it's gone, and it looks like this. I think it's a pretty cool looking effect. So if you want to pause this and copy it, you can. And I'm facing it to the right because this one is going to actually change in angle as well, because it's going to change with the angle of our weapon that we're pointing. So we're starting it off at 0 degrees, which is facing the right, and then we're going to turn it. So let me show you how we're going to do that. Back into our player, and we're going to go back into the code where we shoot some stuff. So shooting the weapon, and here's where we're doing all that. And what's awesome about this is we already know where the tip of the weapon is. It's at our X offset and our Y offset. So we can create weapon flash, and we can do that with our create animated VFX. We're going to use our shoot flash, and we want to create this at the tip of our weapon, just like how we do with our bullet. So we want to do the same exact coordinates for that. And if we wanted to, we could even take those out into local variables and call weapon tip X, and that would be our X plus our X offset. And then we could also have a weapon tip Y, which would be our center Y, my bad, because remember, we're aiming from the center, of course. So our center Y plus our Y offset that we got with the length and directions here. I can put that X down here and that Y down here, and I could also put them here. So my weapon tip X, my weapon tip Y, and for the depth, I think I want the flash to show up on top of the bullet that we're creating, which it sets itself to a, its own depth and its step event. So this is pretty relevant now. And I think it just sets itself to its negative Y, but so if we wanted to, we could set the depth to the negative weapon tip Y, and then again, just to make sure it shows up on top, minus 10 or something like that. Now our, it won't rotate with us yet, but we can add that in a second. First, since we added these new local variables and stuff, let's just make sure everything is drawn all right. Okay, so it's drawn in the right place. It just needs to rotate with us. Cool. And using the negative Y for the depth kind of wasn't a great idea, because actually I don't just want it to show up on top of the bullet, but I want the V effect to show up on top of the actual rod itself, which it's not doing right now. So first of all, if this wasn't working out for you, just make sure you set all this up right with these new local variables. If you decided to copy me, it's got to be X plus X offset. It's got to be center Y plus Y offset. Make sure you name this X, name this Y, and you're putting in X and Y right here and X and Y right here. Okay, so I'm actually just going to make this go simple and say it's going to be the player's depth minus 10, so that way we can guarantee that it shows up on top of the weapon. And now we want it to rotate, which is cool. We can just add some more optional arguments to our animated VFX, which I think is a good thing to do. So I middle clicked and opened up my create animated VFX. And here, like, we can add any optional arguments we want. We could also add in like an X scale, which is optional, that kind of thing, and a Y scale. So we don't really need those right now, but remember, you can add whatever you want. And as long as you make the new arguments optional and you put them after the ones that you've already used, you won't mess up anywhere else that you've called this function already. So I'm going to say _rot for rotation, because that's how GameMaker does it. So I'm just going to go with that. And its default is going to be 0, which means, it's not going to be oriented in any weird way by default. But if we do have an input, we can say image angle equals our rotation. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I can now just add that in. And obviously I want it to match up with my aiming direction that we're using up here and for all this stuff. And so now if I run the game, oh, look at that. I like the way that looks. Leave me alone. Okay, but yeah, looking pretty cool. I like the way this looks. Now, let's see how it looks with our other weapons. So our yellow, whoa, it looks pretty crazy with our yellow. I think that's also because I have the yellow like going way faster than I normally would. I'm pretty positive in one of these videos I just set the yellow up to a really fast time because I just wanted to show that off. And I'm only now realizing that it's going way faster than it probably should be. So I'm gonna go to my weapon creation really quick and check on that. And no, maybe I just made it default too fast. My other project, I actually have it set to 6. which I kind of prefer. So let me try that out because I think it looks pretty cool for the blue. Oh, my way. Oh yeah, that's about the actual speed that I want it to be. But I mean, yeah, again, it's just one of those things where you're just gonna have to edit it for how your weapons are. If you want like a different type of muzzle flash per weapon, that could be another piece of information you add to your weapon list here. You could add that to your constructor. So say this could be like the you know, the flash sprite, and then, you know, just fill that out how you would any other information down here and in these. And then when you're in your player and you're calling this, instead of looking for shoot flash, you could look for weapon dot flash sprite, you know. So if you wanted to make an individual one for each one, you could also have a variable set up that says, you know, should this weapon have a weapon flash. But yeah, it's just an example, and I think what we have here is a pretty dang fun video game with some cool polish going on. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm pretty happy with what we got here. And just because I don't want to say goodbye yet, let's just do one more thing that I'll show you how to do. And that is just one more thing to spruce up our player getting hit. And that's going to be like a cool little overlay vignette that goes over the screen whenever we're hit, that sort of emphasizes that we were in fact hit. So this is it. This is my S hit screen. And here I've saved each individual image just to kind of show you my very simple process I used. So first what I did is I just created a circle with the circle tool, and you know, I made sure to kind of balance it out as much as I could, but I'm just going to do this quick. So I made it sort of like that, and then I just filled in with the color, right? So that's the first thing I did. So then you can go up to this very top toolbar here, and you can go to Effects, which is only 2, but you can go to Blur, and you can sort of increase the intensity, and it will show you. Oh, I'm not on the right layer. So first select the correct layer, go to your effect and blur, and then you can see as I pull this up, the blur intensity comes up. You can also change this to box, which will give it, you know, an even bigger blur, which is nice. So that's what I did. I just added a box full on blur to this. And so you can see it's identical to how it is over here, except the side on the right. Well, it's not totally identical. I think I maybe ran this through 1 or 2 more times. So I could do that over here. I could run the blur, the box blur 1 more time. Okay, I think that, yeah, that's what I did. So these are identical now. So I ran the box blur a couple times. And then you see what I did is I just added these like sort of speed lines, like emphasis lines. And I just used the line tool and drew them, you know, like this, filled them in like that. And these, you can see over here, are just going to add a little bit more emphasis. I'm going to color them black and also blur them out too. So I did that. And then what I did was I had them on an upper layer, so it was separated from this lower part. So that way I could blur these individually. And I used my color replacement tool over here, colored these all black. And then I went back to my effects and my blur. And this time I probably just did a Gaussian blur. Yeah. And I may have not even gone full. I may have just gone like around here, maybe around like 25 for the Gaussian blur. And I applied it, and that should probably look, yeah, it looks pretty much identical. In fact, I even did less of a blur on my final version. But yeah, so that's how I made this screen. And we're not going to draw this at full opacity, but we're going to kind of draw it over the screen at like half opacity or something like that. And it's going to fade in really quick and fade out really quick. So I don't need these extra images, so I'm just going to get rid of it. I just need this one. And now I'm going to create my hit screen object. And it should go without saying that the hit screen overlay needs to be the size of your camera because it has to cover your whole screen. So let's create object hit screen. Cool. Let's set the sprite as the sprite we just made for it. And first, let's go into our create event. And we want to set the depth first. We need to see what does this draw on top of. We probably want it to draw under the HUD and under the pause screen in the game. So let's set the depth to maybe negative 8,000, right? Because our pause screen was at negative 8,500. So that's a pretty good depth. And oh, I was actually wrong. Apparently I decided that it looked better for this to not fade in, but for it to just cut in and then fade out really quickly. So, okay, easy. So fade out control. So first we just need our alpha value. So what alpha do we want to start at? Like I said, I don't want it to be totally this object. I think this object is just a little bit, or this sprite is just a little bit dark. So, and it has a lot of opaqueness to it, and I don't really want that. So I'm going to start the alpha at like 0.65 or something like that. So a little bit over half visible. And then we want the alpha speed, which is the fade out speed. And if we want to determine that by the number of frames it should take, we could just do do whatever our alpha is divided by however many frames we want it to count down, and I'll say 20. So I want it to start at 1 and then count down, and over a third of a second it goes away. So pretty fast, but not too fast. So cool, let's go to our step event. And first thing we want to do is we want to check for our screen pausing. So screen pause, we say if screen pause, then we need to exit. So because what we're going to do is we're just going to immediately start counting down the alpha. So fade out, we're going to say our alpha needs to be minus equals our alpha speed. And then once our alpha is faded out, we want to destroy ourselves. So if our alpha is less than or equal to 0, instance destroy. So we don't have this object hanging out anymore. And so the reason that we do the screen pause is because it makes it just a little bit easier for us, where we know that when the player gets hit, there's already going to be that 25 frame screen pause that we program in. So really, if we just check for screen pausing and we only start subtracting the alpha afterwards, then that basically just means that for that whole time we're frozen, no matter how long we make it, so we could change it later if we wanted to be an even longer pause or a slightly shorter one. The way this hit screen will work is it will just stay up in that time that the player is frozen in place, and then it will fade out once the gameplay starts again, which should only take a third of a second, so it shouldn't be very obtrusive. So we're doing all that right, and then finally we can add a draw event, and we just want to draw over the camera. So what we've done a bunch of times before, let's get our camera X and our camera Y. So we got them, our camera X and our camera Y, and now we just need to draw it. So draw sprite, we're going to draw our sprite index, the first image because it's not animated at all, and we just want to draw it at our camera X and our camera Y. So this object should be working fine. If you want to test it, you can just drop it right in your room and then run your game, and it should show up at least once. But let's just go ahead and put it in our player whenever we get hit, in the same place we put the hit pause and all those other effects. So right here where we get damaged. So let's just create that one first. So we call this hit screen instance create depth. Doesn't matter where we create it or the depth, because the depth is already set to -9,000 in the create event, and we're just creating our object hit screen. So let's make sure that is all working fine. And if I get hit, oh, boom. Oh, no, I forgot one thing. Oops, silly me. We calculated our alpha, but we didn't actually set it in our draw event. We just drew the sprite by itself. So first of all, we technically could have just used our built-in image alpha for this, but sometimes I just don't like using it for some reason. I'm a strange guy like that. So since we used our own alpha variable, we can just do draw sprite extended and then add in this other information. So X scale can just be 1, Y scale can be 1. So we're drawing it at the same size that the sprite is. No rotation. Color is going to be the same, so C white. Or since the image is black, it doesn't really matter. You could put any color here, but now we're going to input the alpha, and now we should get what we want. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that. Methinks that looks pretty good. And we should be able to pause while this is up. Yep, so we can pause while that's up, and our HUD still shows up on top of this, which looks really nice. And so does the pause screen. So we kind of have like the meta stuff floating on top and the actual in-game stuff happening underneath us. I mean, just look at that. Now, if you want to tweak it to fade away a little bit faster or a little bit slower, you can. I could maybe do with it being a little bit slower, but I mean, the point is, we've now made a top-down shooter, folks. So, congratulations. Stick around for the outro, please, so I can properly thank you. And don't worry, there's going to be a bonus episode on this. I haven't forgotten my promise from the beginning. I am going to show you now how you can add a controller support to this game. So yeah, stick around and we'll celebrate in the outro together. But for now, I need to take a break. And I'm just checking to make sure all the spawning works, and it does. We stopped at 100. Okay, just checking. Just checking. Well, here we are, going out with a bang as always, know what I'm saying? But seriously, yeah, that's it. That was the final integral video. I say integral because the series isn't technically done. There's one more bonus episode, but the reason that one's specifically a bonus episode, I talk about, I think, controller support in that one. I do room transitions, and I can't remember what else I do if I do much else, but it's just little things that won't apply to a lot of you. Like, I'm sure a lot of you don't care about controller support. And room transitions, I've even covered it on my channel already, so a lot of you probably have already seen videos on how to do that, and there's tons of videos on how to do that. So this was the last video where it was all stuff like pretty specific to this project. So yeah, you can now wash your hands of this whole thing. Never have to hear my voice again. Congratulations. But yeah, please definitely watch that bonus video if you're interested in it. The other thing is there was a stream that I did. I mentioned it a few times in the series already, but there was a stream that I did that was building on the project that you have pretty much right now, aside from the couple things in the bonus episode. But it was just me getting some ideas from chat and just wanting to do random ideas. I made another enemy that didn't even get finished, but I'm thinking about, doing more streams for it because that was really fun and there's more things I could add to it. It wasn't really tutorial-y. It was more just me going through it and explaining my sort of thought process and what I was doing. So again, it's not really tutorial resource, but you can still definitely just watch me do the whole thing. And at this point, you're probably, hopefully, a good bit more competent with your Game Maker stuff. And yeah, so in the few minutes it's taken me to record the intro and the outro, I have decided I think I'm going to make the discussion a separate video. I'm going to try and put it up on YouTube the same day I put up part 14, the bonus video, which would be the Thursday after this video has gone up. Chances are it's already up. But yeah, I figured the discussion could be useful for people who didn't even participate in the series, just because I want to talk about like general things with game development and stuff like that. So yeah, please definitely watch that though, because there are some things that I definitely want to say. If this was like a learning proper in a building scenario where I could lock my doors and have you not leave until I told you so, I would force you to listen to the discussion and perhaps even participate, which you've basically been doing if you've been commenting and stuff. I read a lot of the comments. I don't respond to a lot of them because I'm massively busy, but I read a ton of the comments on pretty much all the videos. So yeah, there are a couple little interesting things that I want to bring up in that discussion. So yeah, definitely watch that. Definitely stay tuned for any more streams if there's more. Like I said, you pick and choose whether or not you want to watch the 14th episode, but watching the stream is probably a cool idea because again, I just did different new things in it and did things in different ways. So yeah. Since I'm doing the discussion in another video, I'm not going to ramble too much more. I'm already X amount of minutes into the outro here, so I've probably lost most people, especially considering I'm on the episode I've labeled as the finale. But if you are still here, thank you so much. You are the best. I am extremely proud of you, and I mean this partially as a stranger who's never met you, but also as a person who can genuinely say that they're proud of you because you made it to this point. I mean, you can just check the views on the video. I mean, probably check the views in the last 5 videos especially, and you're one of the few who's made it, who stuck it all the way through. So you go in places, kid. I feel it. But yeah, you're great. You're the best. A gamer among gamers, truly. If you've gotten to this point and you haven't, please wish list Starcross Starcade Special on Steam. There's always links to it in my in the description of pretty much every video I make. Don't even have to buy it, just wish list it. So every time I check in, intervals of 5 months, I can see the number go up by like 20 people and be like, oh, yay. But yeah, definitely grab it when it comes out if you want. And if it is out already and you're watching this far in the future, then please go buy it. I would appreciate that. If you think it looks fun, you can join my Discord. I know I don't plug it much because I'm pretty horribly inactive on there, but unfortunately, that's just what you're going to get from me in general. I'm not very good at social medias and things like that, but that is the best place to get like all the updates that I do for everything. Every time I post a video or whatever, it's on there. Anytime there's something important to say about the game, which is not often, but when it is, that is one of the few places that actually, I actually put it up. I have a Twitter that I also kind of barely use, and I plug at the bottom of the screen, but this outro is being recorded at a time where no one really knows if Twitter is going to even exist pretty soon properly, so follow me if you want. It'd be cool to hit 1,000 followers before Twitter explodes, but also I really don't care. So do whatever you want to do. I feel like we're fast friends by now, so if you want to help me out, feel free, but also as a pal, I understand if you don't feel like it. I don't really like doing computer things too much myself. Ironic given my profession. And of course, the last way that you can help, aside from the YouTube stuff, would be the Patreon. There she is. I didn't forget. I never forget. So check that out if you want to. Patreon got this entire series before the first episode even went up on YouTube. So for months now, pretty much, the Patreon members have had every single episode here. Not sure if I'll do that exact format going forwards because it did pose certain challenges, but the point is they get stuff pretty early, like not just a couple days early, but most of the time they'll get stuff substantially before YouTube does. And that normally is proportional to the size of the project in the video, but yeah. I don't really have any rules on it though, so don't be mad at me if at some point I do it is just like 2 days early access or something like that. But historically, the shortest one's been a week and the longest one has been about 2 months. So yeah, but those people are great. I've been very, very surprised by how many people have actually been supporting. So that's super, super nice. And I'm incredibly appreciative. And I'm going to go ahead and give my special thanks to my star gamers again: Nixionic, Red Dragon Redemption, Null, Joseph Sandlin, Midnight, Jericho Deloach, Aogio, Homeless Bums Ahoy, Captain Ludwig, Christian Donovan, Nick, Crunch Sting, Mike Yeager, 8Pod, Zail, I hope I pronounced that right, and Firis Alharden, or maybe it's Firis. Also hope I got that right. Thank you guys so much, and thank you so much to all my other patrons as well. You're all great, and I hope I see all of you in the discussion. Okay, go make your games now. Go grow up.